Chris Alfano, are you ready to fearlessly question today?
I don't know. Am I?
I don't know. Before the show we were starting, I actually had to try and I was taking your pulse to see if we were gonna. You're pretty laid back. You're probably gonna win the award for most laid back guest in show history. So I'll see
Really?
if yeah. Well, yeah. No, I can safely say that. Yeah, I could probably have the plaque engraved and mailed to you. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I'll take that. I'll give you my address later.
All right. Fantastic. Um, Chris, so I took down my East of the Wall Postman Syndrome fanboy wall behind me here before we started because I didn't want to embarrass you too much, but I will try and keep the gushing to a minimum. I don't even know
Mhm.
if you fully understand why we're here. If I get you to laugh one time in the next 30 minutes, I will consider the interview a success, just once. Um, but before we get started, why don't you catch everybody up and tell everybody your story? I picked this for you, so you may or may not have thoughts about this, but and what I envision, tell everybody your story, fearlessly questioning being ahead of your time.
Well, it all started when a sperm hit an egg. Uh,
You were ahead of the whole even birthing process. I like it.
yeah, I was. Well, I guess I won there because I was born, which is, sometimes good. All right, I was in a couple bands, I guess, is what most people know me for. I was in a band called the Postman Syndrome from 1996 until when the hell did that band end? 2005. So yeah, 9 years in that band, and then I played in a band that was essentially most of the same people called Day Without Dawn. Uh, Put out a record with that band. Um, then I was in a, and then I eventually, through a series of a long story that nobody wants to hear, was in East of the Wall, which was also most of the same people from Postman Syndrome. Although since then we've had a couple lineup changes, so now only 3 out of the 5 people were in Postman Syndrome, and we've done a few more records, and we've toured around a bit, and I don't know exactly how much I fearlessly question stuff, but I guess those bands that I was in, especially back then, did the genre mix-up thing earlier than some other bands had done it, which I suppose is cool.
Well, yeah, I would give you definitely credit for that. First off, I will maybe forever hate you for one breaking up the Postman Syndrome, because probably one of my favorite bands of all time that only put out one album, which is ridiculous, and you got the B
Well, we
sides.
kind of put out two.
You put out the B sides, which yeah, I mean we'll kind of count it, but and then Day Without Dawn even. I was like, okay, yes, I can get on board with this. It's kind of like it sounds the same thing, and then that band goes away. I'm like, and then the early part of East of the Wall, I guess I was not. I'll consider myself not musically ready for what was happening, and I didn't really jump on board fully until a couple albums in, and then
Yeah, well, I mean, if a couple albums in was when that band basically became the Postman Syndrome again.
well, so that's why I started to like it.
Yeah, it was a weird, stupid, complicated story. It started as an offshoot of Postman with only a couple people, and then as more people from Postman joined it, we kind of co-opted the band. I think Brett, when he founded it, wanted it to be something different, and he kind of gave up creative control, helming that ship, in order to make it a more democratic thing, where we all had our stupid fingers in the pie, and ultimately that wound up essentially making it Postman Syndrome Part 3. I mean, technically, Day Without Dawn could have been the Postman Syndrome. Actually, I wanted to keep it called the Postman Syndrome, and those guys thought it would be a great idea to have it be a different band name because
Terrible idea.
terrible if
Terrible.
anyone followed
Terrible.
us. So
Terrible
that wasn't
idea.
my fault.
Was
And
it, well, you had a different vocalist on that band, did you
no,
not?
the main singer from Postman Syndrome was the singer in Day Without Dawn.
It's he sounded
I mean,
he sounded
his
slightly different, but
his style kind of developed a lot. Actually, on the Day Without Dawn EP before the full length, his style was even more different because he had he was sick of people saying that he sounded like the Maynard from Tool, so he tried to
I
change
never
up his
got
vocal
that.
style.
Never got
Yeah, I
that.
thought that was always exaggerated too, but whatever. But he wanted to change up his vocal style and use more of his range, and he started taking singing lessons, and his style kind of wound up changing a bit. And then, especially on the later songs we wrote on Understanding Consequences, the Day Without Dawn full length, his style wound up going back a little bit more. So there's definitely parts where you can listen to it and tell it's the same.
And
Uh,
and adding to that confusion too, I might add, you guys are probably the most mysterious band ever. Like, there's not tons of information out there on you. Like, there's not like
I think that
a centralized thing that I can kind of reference, like to the names and lineup changes. Like, you don't have a Wikipedia page, which I'm upset about.
yeah, no one's ever made one. I think it's less like it's not like we're Portal or even Ghost or something where it's like we're trying to be mysterious. It's just we're never really that popular, so no one made a Wikipedia page for us. Feel free if you're a
Well, see,
Wikipedia.
which I find very hard to believe, and that's why we're having this conversation. Exactly the reason why. But at first, I have to share a bit of a story of my patheticness, really, and where my life is at, and in relation to music and what being a parent does to you, and how much I mean, it's a love hate relationship. But you guys were around my neck of the woods in the Akron area. I think it was last April ish. You were here
Yeah.
with a former guest of the show, JCK Jeff Clem. You guys
Mhm.
played what the dive bar of all dive
Uh,
bars, Annabelle's.
yeah.
And I said, I'm going to the show. It's Maid Marian. It's east of the wall. I said, I cannot miss this thing. I will be there. And it's like the show started at 11:30,
Mhm.
and me being pathetic and not being able to stay awake, I fell asleep before the show even started at like 9:30. Sad thing is, I actually woke up in time to actually make it to the show. Well, short. I like woke up at like 11:15. I was like, oh man, I was gonna go to that show. But you guys are coming back, right? You're coming back sometime in April, aren't you not? Again?
No, but I mean, I'm sure we'll be back there. I mean, even if we don't have a tour in the immediate future, I'm sure we'll be back for a one-off at some point within the next year or something like that.
Are you
But we
sure you're
have
not
one
coming
more.
back? I thought I saw somewhere that you guys are coming back in like the spring, March or April.
No, we don't have a single show booked right now.
Well, then I have bad information. That's terrible, of me.
I
Um,
think you're looking at 2014 press releases.
maybe unless I saw I must have been poking around on your website. I was like, oh, maybe they're coming back again. But all right, well then I'll be disappointed again and continue to hate
Yeah,
myself.
I think on the website the last news post is about the 2014 tour.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess I should have read the year then. All right. Well, Chris, thank you for that. First, non-official fearless question to you to kind of loosen things up a little bit, kind of kicking things off. How disappointed are you in humanity that basically 90% of people don't even know what terraforming is?
Uh, well, we kind of gave up on space, so I'm more disappointed that we collectively have no interest in terraforming in the scientific community, or at least no impetus. I'm sure plenty of people have interest, but no financial impetus anyway. Um, I don't necessarily blame people so much because, hey, it's not in their day-to-day lives, but I am kind of bummed out that, we landed on the moon, 50 years ago, and we haven't done much more with that. I know they're talking about finally trying to get people to Mars. I'll believe that when it actually happens. So that's a little bit what I'm more bummed out about personally.
But and for everybody playing along at home, terraforming is creating an atmosphere around a planet or altering the atmosphere in such a way to make it healthier. Am I correct in that?
Yes, as far as I understand it from Star Trek and Firefly and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah. But again, even then, that the name of the album itself. So the album, the reason I brought you on and is to kind of talk about that album, but then again, just your overall approach to the work that you do. I
Mhm.
mean, just even the name of that is ahead of its time. I mean, the album was released in 2002. I mean, I think they mentioned it in I don't know, in some recent science fiction movie, maybe Avatar. I don't know. That sounds terrible. That's probably not right, but
I think
um,
there was at least one other similarly titled album. Afterwards, it turned out that Shellac, one of Steve Albini's bands, had that album called Terraform, I think. And then after our record, a Swedish band, I never know how to pronounce their name. It's either Nut or Newt. It's Knut. So I always thought it was Nut, but someone told me it's Newt. Whatever. Um, they have an album called Terraformer, but that came out after ours, even though the band was around before us.
It's interesting. I didn't know that, but yeah, it's I mean, you don't hear the word tossed around that often, and like I said, I mean, the that concept alone. I mean, in all reality, if we want to get to where we're actually going with, you know, like you said, advancement, terraforming is going to be like something that we would have to ultimately get a hold of, right?
Mhm. Yeah, or we all just go into the virtual cloud and just sit around in very tiny white rooms and don't need space anymore because we can just like have an Oculus on or something. One of
Well,
the two.
we will interrupt this episode of the universe, and we'll try and maybe bring it back into. I think everyone just stopped listening. Like, what are these guys talking about? We don't even know what terraforming is, but I enjoyed it, so at least we have that going for us. The first real fearless question to you, and we'll take the gloves off here finally. Um, is it worth it to get too far ahead of ourselves?
Uh, it depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to be successful, then probably there's a sweet spot of being exactly ahead enough. Um, it seems. If you were making a video game system in the 80s and you had an internet adapter for it, it was probably a failed peripheral. And then if you released the same peripheral in 2000, that would have still be ahead of its time, but maybe it would be successful. And you can take that as a microcosm for anything else. But yeah, I think you never want to be too ahead of your time. You want to be exactly ahead of your time enough.
And is that something you guys deliberately tried to do, or was that something that just
No,
happened by
we didn't
accident?
care. All
Yeah.
those songs were written when we were, in college, not giving a shit about anything. So, we weren't trying to do anything except write music. We weren't necessarily trying to take the band anywhere. We actually, by all accounts, shouldn't have found a label to put that record out because we weren't trying. We had never, like when usually if you're going to get a label to back you, you had to have already been doing the work. We paid plenty of dues eventually, but we didn't pay our dues before that record came out. We had never toured until after the record was recorded. Um, so we weren't trying to like, hey, we've got this plan that we're gonna like be the greatest band and do all this stuff. It just we were just we had different tastes and we just went into the band with the goal of hey, just accommodate everyone's tastes, and that's what we came out with.
Well, because and we'll remind everybody, the album came out in 2002, right?
Yeah, a lot of the songs were the earliest song on that record was written in 1999.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, the songs were written between 99 and 2001.
And I mean, 2002 is still a time period. I mean, I remember walking into Best Buy in, you know, Canton, Ohio, where I was going to college, and I saw it. You know, like that was still a big deal then, right?
Yeah, and that label that we were on was a really weird label to be on. A bunch of stuff happened with that band that were kind of singular to. I think we had a fairly unique indie label experience because the label didn't have too many big releases. They put out their probably most popular band at the time was Diecast, who a lot of people don't remember now, but they were doing the New England new wave of American heavy metal thing before like Shadows Fall or a lot of those other bands, and they were fairly popular for a little bit. And they put out like the very first Dillinger Escape Plan EP that no one bought or
Oh, really?
remembered
Wow. I did not know that.
before Under the Running Board. It sort of sounds like Dillinger, but it actually, I don't know if you're familiar with Dead Guy or Kiss It Goodbye, but it sounds, yeah, there was this band called Rorschach, who were this really, seminal but under the radar Northeast band. Like a lot of people in our scene know them, a lot of people outside the scene don't know them. And one of those guys went on to be in Dead Guy with a couple other people, and then that guy joined up with the Dead Guy singer and then the old Rorschach drummer in another band called Kiss It Goodbye. And their sound, I think, pretty heavily influenced Dillinger, but then Dillinger like took it and then put it on amphetamines and played it twice as fast. Um, And well, anyway, so that label had really only one popular release, and then obscure release by a popular band. And then they said, "Screw it, we're just going to invest a hell of a lot of money into our label with the hopes that if we just make the investment up front, it's all going to pay off." And it didn't, and then they quickly folded. And they had like 6 people working for them at their peak when they really only had 20 albums in their back catalog and only like 6 active bands, and like they literally had one staff member per active band on the label, which is crazy. So yeah, we, for a band that had never toured, and didn't have any following whatsoever outside of our 50 people that would come to our shows at most in New Jersey. Just because our label was spending a lot of money, we wound up with CDs at Best Buy, and like the guy even like gave us 2 or 3 grand for a van. Um, but,
I mean, I gotta ask, how did that even happen?
Mainly because our singer Jim, well, singer guitar player. It's weird to say the singer and Postman because we had 2 guys that sang and played guitar, and then I played guitar and screamed, and then our bassist also did some screaming. So all 4 guitars in front did some kind of vocals. But the guy who did more singing than anyone else, Jim, his older brother played guitar in Burnt by the Sun briefly, which was a Relapse Records band that was fairly popular. And their drummer was Dave Whitty, who's in a billion bands. And we played a show opening for Burnt by the Sun, and Dave Whitty was into us, and because Dave like knows everyone in the scene, he was like, "Hey, I'm going to try to get these guys on a label," and he called up a bunch of people, and they our label Now or Never was into it, and they took Dave's word for it and came to a show. If it wasn't for us playing a show, and if it wasn't for Dave Whitty specifically, we never would have. Most of my musical career, if you can call it a career, happened because one of my bandmates' older brothers was in a band with Dave Whitty.
I mean, so then what was that like? I mean, you guys obviously it sounded like, to have an album at Best Buy to where, a 19-year-old kid like myself is seeing it. I mean, what was that experience like?
Uh,
Since it seems like it happened relatively quickly.
yeah, I guess. I mean, the band actually. I have no idea how many albums we sold. I have no idea if. I think any popularity the band had happened like after the label was defunct, and then we weren't. We had never toured ever. Postman did like 3 weeks of touring uh, total. So I think we actually had like a bit of a post-release like slow climb after the fact, and it got around. More than anything, the local college radio station WSOU, which I think is still one of the bigger college radio stations, but I think in today's Spotify world, people pay less attention to it. We got on heavy rotation at WSOU, and I think if anything contributed to any fan base the band had, it was the fact that we were getting played 1 or 2 times a day on WSOU for a couple months. But I don't know. I think that I think the band and East of the Wall. I mean, definitely had our fans. Probably by now, East of the Wall has had more fans than Postman. Um, but still, I think people think we were more popular than we were because we've just been around for a while, and I think a lot of the time PR is about tricking people into thinking you're already popular. So it winds up being self-perpetuating, and if the CD's in Best Buy, then they assume, oh, this band has to have some kind of popularity if it's already in Best Buy, when really just someone had a good marketing connection, um, and I don't know. I think it was cool that we had a CD with a barcode and a thing on top, and someone could go into a store and buy it.
I mean, Chris, you're making me cry a little bit on the inside telling this story. I'm not gonna lie.
I try to that's usually what I try to do is just ruin everyone's good time.
Yeah, well, I
But
appreciate that. So I'll wrap this part of the conversation up by then just asking. I kind of know the answer, but uh, I would say, did being better than everyone else then get you to where you want to be?
I don't know if I would say we were better than everybody else. I guess some people liked what we did, but I ne I never really had a lot of goals with it. One or two of my musical goals still haven't done. I've still never played anywhere in Asia or South America. I've always wanted to do that. Um, but I mean, I honestly, I did more than I ever thought I would with it. Um, I'd still like to go back and play Europe again, but I don't know. I'm pretty proud of what we did, and I like where we went with it. Of course, it would have been cool to, if the band, was something that we could have done, be on tour 9 months a year or whatever. But I've found that usually all of my favorite bands can't sustain themselves on touring because they never get popular enough to do it. Like whenever I have had talks with people about like, here's what I recommend your band should do if you want to take it to the next level, and not like anything like, oh, you need to like write pop hits or whatever like that, because scenes of music we work in, that's not the conversation, but still just like, recording in this style, like using this type of producer, or like, you should really like decide on a theme for your artwork or something like that. I don't know. I just like I never. Not that I'm against having a theme for an artwork, but like having like the logo, like this is like the subject matter of all your artwork, and I don't know. I just found that the things that you have to do in order to have a band that goes to that next level outside of the paying your dues stuff, more just like how you have to present yourself and everything like that. I just would find it kind of unappealing. So I think we did about as much as we could have done um, without making some of those compromises. I do, probably my biggest regret is that we didn't learn enough about, like, I never really learned how to book a DIY tour until later in my life. And I wish I would have known how to book those types of tours when I was still in college, because I feel like we could have done a lot more touring at a younger age, and that would have been awesome. But, oh well.
There's a lot in there that I want to ask you about, but in order to keep this thing somewhat concise and not spill into like a second day, I'm not going to. I'm going to resist the urge, and I'm
Okay.
going to give you the opportunity to turn the tables on the audience at this time and ask them one of your own fearless questions, something you've always wanted to maybe know the answer to, but were a little unsure of the response. What's that question?
What does my back look like? Because even with a mirror, it's hard to tell. I mean, like you have to go like 3 mirrors, and all right now. So, am I supposed to be asking a specific type of person, or
Nope, it's just anything. There's no rules.
yeah? I don't know. I lately sometimes I think about why I always wish people would ask themselves like, why am I not actually saying what's on my mind? I find as I get older, as I get older and less caring about stuff, I generally want to just like I don't have as much tolerance for just people not speaking what's on their mind, and I wish people would just ask themselves more like, what's the harm if I just actually um, address an issue instead of just like avoiding it. It
Well,
I
I'm
don't
sure.
know if I don't know if that's what you're looking for with a
Oh no,
fear.
that's plenty fearless enough, and I'm sure having spent a few minutes with me, you know that I don't suffer from that too terribly much, as I say quite a few awkward things that I probably shouldn't. But when you say you're getting old, how old are you, Chris?
I am 36. I just turned 36 about a month ago.
Well, happy belated birthday. And, I mean, I guess if I had to answer that briefly, I would absolutely 110% agree. What would be the one thing that you think is holding people back?
I just think that people don't like, just people have a natural aversion to confrontation. And I mean, I understand the want to not have any kind of drama. I think that's the other double-edged sword, because I have to actually usually check myself in the opposite direction. Sometimes I have to say, like you don't necessarily want to be afraid to speak your mind, but on the other hand, sometimes I think, will any good come of this, and are you just going to be creating drama for no reason? So I usually like to give myself a couple minutes to sleep on it before, like, especially if I have the opportunity to, like, if it's an email or a correspondence or a text or something like that. Usually I sleep on it for a couple minutes and say, like, am I just creating drama for no reason, or do I think I can actually affect change by bringing this up? And I like to try to weigh the two.
Well, those are some definitely. I feel like we should play the PBS The More You Know sort of, or that's NBC The More You Know. I think that was some good
Yeah, I
stuff.
think it's yeah, yeah.
NBC. Or we can get GI Joe out here. One of the two. I'm not quite sure. But no, I feel like I think that's I would say that that's probably a wise sage-like advice. Um, and continuing along with the idea of being smarter and being more kind of precise with the things. The next question that I would have to you is would it be smarter? We kind of touched on it earlier. Would it be smarter to kind of spread out that like kind of advancement or being ahead of your time to bring more people along with you, or is that something that you can't necessarily care about and still do that at the same time?
Uh, I think most of if you're going to do good work, you're not really thinking about, you know, like, I think usually the best work comes from just like, is somewhat organic and comes naturally. So, if you're on a roll, you should just do what you're doing. Uh, and you're either going to be ahead of your time or you're going to be not. And I think often what's more important is to be, like, just be doing good creative work. I mean, I've always been envious of people that are so talented, with music or writing or whatever have you, that they can actually choose what type of work is going to come out of them. I've always been a little bit more limited in that. Um, maybe I'm enjoying what I'm doing, but I can't go into something and say, I'm going to do something in this style today. Like, I want to have this outcome when I create something. Especially with music, with writing, maybe I'm a little better at that. But with music, it's just like whatever's going to come out is going to come out. And I don't think I could ever, like, score a movie or something, because I don't think I could go into writing a composition and say, oh, for this one, it's kind of a film noir thing, but they've also got like an Eastern European vibe. So I think we're going to bring in some of these influences and these influences. And, if you can actually go into, some artwork and say, I'm going to be ahead of my time because I've got this brilliant idea and I know what I'm going to come out with ahead of time, and this is my plan. Then you execute that plan. You're probably more talented than me, and do whatever you want. God bless you.
Do you think that has to do with talent, being able to pick
Well,
and
yeah.
choose?
Well, I mean, I suppose it's a little bit semantic. How you're going to define talent. It's a pretty broad thing, but um, I think it would be hard to argue that if you, as a musician, wanted to set a specific goal of composing uh, in a certain style with a certain set of limitations, and you make something really good, it's hard to do that if you're not talented.
Let me ask you this question then. So let's say you could choose, you had the option to be able
Have a
to flip
hand
that.
that only works while screaming, that can only look up. Which would
Very.
you choose?
Um, well, mine's a little
I
different.
didn't think
I would say
of that.
I would say if you had the option to choose that talent switch, if you could flip your talent switch in any direction you wanted to, if you could do that, or instead
Mhm.
that thing that only comes out of you, just whatever it is, you don't really have much control over it. It's just coming regardless. This kind of sounds weird, but but that thing that is just coming is going to be better, far better than the picking and the choosing.
Well, then yeah, I'd take whatever's better.
You would take whatever's better.
I mean, well, you know what? Like, if my job was a composer, then like if someone was like, "Hey, you're gonna have this job working in, filming, working at a TV studio or something," then maybe I would choose that. But that's actually why I've never really tried to pursue as a career anything that I enjoy doing, is because the things that I really enjoy doing are just like specific to me. I've generally, even when people think they're good, they're like very distinctly like, you can tell it's me. I've never really been good, especially with music, at being any kind of a chameleon. So I never once believed that I could like make a living off of it or make a career out of it, and I've always preferred to just not have anyone else mess with it, because it's tough enough for me to do what I'm doing when it's just like my own thing. And so yeah, if I was ever in a situation where I actually could do it in a different capacity, then I suppose that would be useful. But no, actually, I mean, overall, what I mainly care about is just making something good.
Do you consider yourself a professional musician?
No. That would mean I would have to have ever made any money making music. And I am
Really?
so in the grand scheme of things, I am so thoroughly in the red that possible for me to ever turn that around.
And at this point in your elderly life, do you share any of those same ambitions, or are you just doing it because that's what you do?
Nah, I mean that was kind of always my thing. I mean, it's not like I ever would have turned down the ability to do to be a professional musician, but I never. It was never my primary goal. And I mean, honestly, if it's not your primary goal, you're never gonna achieve it. Like, the people, with a couple random exceptions, the people that do wind up, I hesitate to even say making a living, because most of the people that are doing it full time are still barely eking out a living. They're still struggling, living hand to mouth. But the people who even get that far, which is a really considerable accomplishment, are the people that focused on that, to the exclusion of pretty much everything else in their life from a very early age, and were laser focused on it. Um, and I never really did that. And I didn't really have it in that. Uh, so, yeah, it's kind of a moot point on my end.
So then, what is your primary focus?
Ruining your good time. No,
Well,
I mean,
that much I do know is that I can vouch for that. But outside of my eternal sadness that I will have after this conversation, there's got to be something.
um, well, I mean, it's is my primary focus, but it's not a
You cut out there a little bit, Chris. I don't know if I got that.
all I'm saying is it was never a career focus of my, like, it's never something I wanted to do full time, because I always felt like there were too many. I like being able to make whatever the hell I want to make, in the time frame and the circumstances that I want to make it. It's like, you see these bands, and they're touring for 9 months of the year, and it's like, okay, we're home, we've got 1 month, we got to write a record, go, that type of thing. And so I kind of wanted to structure my life so that I could, still the thing I look most forward to is, working on music with the people that I'm in bands with. But I prefer doing that as without any kind of demands on it from, like, hey, it's got to be, it's got to hit a certain level of popularity, or you're only gonna have so much time to work on it because you're always on the road, and that type of thing.
So then, outside of the music, then what is it? Like, what are you chasing beyond that, like professionally or career-wise?
I mean, I just have a standard boring day job. I work in an audiobook company, and I, you know, copy edit and I coordinate covers of books and stuff like that, and just boring administrative stuff.
Do you think that it's possible to create an environment where you can do music in the way that you want on the time that you want, and also create the financial stability to do that?
Well, do you mean me or people in general?
Just in general, where the
Okay,
industry is at.
plenty of people do, and I mean, I've always been jealous of people that, like, a guy that I worked next to in the last department I was in. He never made a career out of it anyway. But if he did, he would have been perfectly content to have been playing like radio butt rock. And it's like, that's the type of thing where it's like, for me, I would have had to, like, it would be a compromise thing. But like that dude, he just, like, he loves like radio rock, and in a way I'm kind of jealous of that, because it would be so awesome if what artistically fulfilled you was what was completely commercially viable. Like, in a way that would be great. You could do music as your career, and you would be making music that people like. The thing is, I like to make stupid music that a very niche group of people are into, and so I know, if I'm going to be doing it, then I just need to do it as a side thing. And I've intentionally, like, I don't want to have it tainted by any kind of business, because it would just wind up being a nightmare. Any time, like, when I was writing for a website, I still do, but I kind of like took a step back from it. I just found out, like, my own sensibilities in pretty much anything artistic are just always butt heads with any kind of commercial endeavor, and I've personally just like to keep them separate. I'd rather just, I enjoy my job well enough, but I'd rather just go in and just make money at what I'm making, and then just, like, when I want to create something, just not worry at all about how it exists in a commercial space. But there's plenty of people that, either due to just an incredible amount of talent or due to their personal tastes, can create stuff that's popular and they enjoy it, and that's awesome. I wish my taste and my talent warranted that.
Well, would it possibly be any sort of limitation on you maybe not giving it the respect that you possibly have the ability to give it?
Uh, I mean, who knows? But no, I mean, I don't know. Just, I have a singular thing in pretty much anything that I like to do, and I've never found the hole that peg fits in. It's so I just, by this point in my life, I don't want to wade in any of that anymore. I just like keeping it separate.
What keeps you going then, creating the music? Because I mean that is, I mean, still a relatively gigantic commitment.
I got to do something. If anything, I just need to keep myself busy. I find that when I'm idle, I tend to get depressed, and the best solution to that is to just keep myself busy pretty much all the time. Sometimes, like, I'll have a day off and I'll look forward to it, and then, like, if I just, like, relax, I feel like shit at the end of the day because I relaxed and I didn't do too much. And the times that I find I'm in, like, a good mood is the times when I've accomplished something or created something. So that's what keeps me doing it.
I'm going to toss this out there, and you're fully welcome or within your rights to hang up on me or tell me I'm crazy. Um, but there's a band that does that, that's from the Akron area as well. I don't know if you've heard their name around out in your guys' parts, but If These Trees Could Talk, they're an instrumental band.
Yeah, I know of them. I may have heard them. I forget, but I definitely know the band name.
And I think, and where East of the Wall started, and even, I mean, where you're at today, they do a lot of kind of, it's very progressive. It has its ebbs and flows, but they've somehow stumbled upon licensing a ton of that material, and it's not. compromised artistically in any way, shape, or form that I can imagine or am aware of. I mean, would it be viable for you or any other musicians to just say like, listen, we're going to create something that is within our scope artistically, but might be able to lend itself to some type of licensing and pursue those avenues as they might be the more efficient or lucrative ways to maintain your musical tastes and habits.
Yeah, I mean it's just you can do that, but I think you're better off. I mean, I don't know that band at all, but um, if they created their stuff and just found that people were interested in licensing it, that's different than going into it saying I'm going to create something in order to license it. And I just feel like some people what they create and put out there is more applicable to that type of use than others. Nothing really base the wall is done I can think of. I mean, I don't. I'm sure there's some movie creator or something that would be cool. Would be like, hey, this song is great. I'd like to use it in my student film or something like that.
Well,
Um,
let me use a more popular example. Explosions in the Sky. I'm sure you probably heard of them.
mhm. Yeah.
They do. I mean, they've done. I mean, I think half of their one album was on Friday Night Lights, the movie.
Yeah, I mean, I think their style of music though more lends itself to that.
Well, sure. I mean, it's obviously a little more easy on the ears, I guess, if you'll say. But I mean, I could see a scenario where if you just remove a couple vocals from an East of the Walls track, I mean, you've got pretty wide-ranging sounds that would kind of lend itself for a nice canvas or backdrop for something to happen over top of it. But it sounds like you might
Yeah,
want to set that thing on fire, though.
I suppose. I mean, I guess the odds of turning that into something are low. The way I've always looked at it as if I wanted to make money at something, there are much easier ways to go about doing it. I think that trying to make money off of music is a lot like trying to make money off of buying a lottery ticket. Like, technically it's possible, but there are just better ways to do it. And, you're in that situation, you're definitely changing what you create for the possibility of getting something out of it. And I would rather just definitely create exactly what I want to create and not worry about what happens to it afterwards. I just like the idea of we're going to go in. I mean, you're in a democratic band, so you're never going to get exactly what you want. And actually, in that situation, then on top of that, you already have to deal with the fact that you have 5 people in a room who are already disagreeing about what the hell they want to do, and at least 1 or 2 people is probably walking out of that rehearsal a little bit bummed out that that the discussion or the jam of what the music was going to be didn't go their way. If on top of that you have to bring in, considerations for, hey, if we just did this, like, we could have a radio hit, or we could have, a song that, then that just, it's another layer of something that I'd rather just not deal with. It's not to say we've never done it. I mean, actually, in Postman specifically, Rotating Cryptoid was written to give our label a song that they could play on the radio.
Well, as depressing as that answer leaves for me, I'm going to leave it there because I think it's important. I'll stop there, and I will cry myself to sleep tonight a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, Chris, I do appreciate you taking the time to be here with us. Where would you want somebody to go to check out more about what you do and not pay you money for it?
Um, East of the Wall has a .com, eastofthewall.com specifically. And then we're on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, pretty much anything / East of the Wall, And then my other band, New York in 64, doesn't have a website, but we are on Facebook and Twitter either as, like, I think it's facebook.com/nyin64, and then Twitter might just be ny64. I've got to actually change that. But if you just go and Google and put in quotes East of the Wall or New York in '64, you're going to find us because both band names don't have too many other terms. Occasionally, I have a Google search going for, automated for East of the Wall, and occasionally I'll get like Palestinian conflict East of the Wall, or something about Game of Thrones, like, even though it should be north of the wall, but whatever. But yeah, basically just search Google for one of those and you'll find it.
All right, Chris. Depression and all, I do really appreciate you being here. I'm going to try and cheer myself up. I'm going to listen to Terraforming after we're done here and be happy,
Yeah, cool.
and then maybe some East of the Walls and then East of the Wall and feel good about it. But Chris, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
While
wish
you're
you best of
listening
luck.
to Terraforming, you could admire how on our radio hit that we wrote, we didn't have a chorus. That shows how good we were at selling out. We created a radio hit that didn't have a chorus.
You don't have to argue with. I mean, I would applaud you for that and pat you on the back.
Yeah.
I would be interested in partnering with you on saying how can we actually make that song a radio hit
Well,
without changing anything. That would be my
we
goal.
might be 13 years too late.
I know. Well, I told the story. I didn't actually buy the album until 2006, so I was 4 years late on even the whole thing in general. So I'm
I
just
think
gonna.
that's very indicative of that band.
So no, I knew about it. Believe me, I had amputees make bad swimmers. I downloaded illegally. I'm sorry, Chris. Somewhere on
Nah,
my computer, it found its way onto my computer, and I was like, this band is awesome. And I never found that. I mean, I saw it in Best Buy once, and then I never saw it again. And I was like, ah. And then it took me 4 years to care enough to find it.
yeah.
So.
Thanks for picking it up eventually.
And then I got Day Without Dawn, and then all the East of the Wall stuff eventually. And so, but Chris, I salute you. Hopefully you guys keep making music, and if there ever is a Postman reunion, let me know about it, and I will definitely be there.
Okay. Thank
Well,
you.
we will catch everybody on the next one. If you guys want to hear what fearless question Chris is most afraid to ask himself, we did that before the show. Head on over to fearlesslyquestioning.com. There's a big box for you to just put your name and email on, and Chris, you can get access to that, along with all of our other guests, including JCK, who we talked about. He's in there, too, a couple other musicians. But we will catch you guys on the next one. Chris, thanks so much. Take it easy,
All right.
everybody.
Take care.